What is up, YouTube? I have Sebastian High, who is the USHL and NCAA scout for Elite Prospects. How are you doing, Sebastian?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. And how does it feel having the draft behind us now? Because for me, I think it's mostly a relief. But you had the whole draft experience actually going there this year, right?
Yeah, I'm a little sad. I mean, it's like a graduating class. My dog's barking. I don't know if you hear, but his name's Bear. I'm gonna miss, following Carter Bear and, like getting to really wind down is hard for me now that I'm like doing content all day. It's like I can't stop. I think I've developed FOMO for it. So I'm recording like three, four interviews a day, and I just can't stop. It might be a passion, it might be an addiction. I honestly have no idea at this point. 2025 draft is very hard for me to not talk about because it was my first draft that I was covering
Yeah.
online. So it's gonna be sad, but now I get to go to, I applied to go to World Junior Summer Showcase. I'm excited for that. Maybe see Anton and James Haggins, Rombach, some of these guys that I've developed like just not friendships at all, but like just like I've talked to over the
Fondness.
season. Fondness, yeah. And it's just kind of cool to see how they develop. Obviously, there's a huge break and a lot of people are taking a break until like September. So a lot of my normal YouTubers I hang out with are taking breaks. But
Yeah.
other than that, like the draft was great. The combine was awesome. Just really cool experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. Like the going to the draft is definitely like a special experience. Like I got to do it twice, and in Nashville and Vegas, and I feel like I got like two pretty good years where I was
Yeah.
able to go. Whereas like LA this year sounded a bit less like extraordinary perhaps than the previous years had been. But like, what were your takeaways of the like decentralized draft? Because it's probably going to be a one and done.
I think it was better for me for my first one. Like looking back, I would not have been able to hang out with Cam Robinson, Stephen Ellis, and Marco D'Amico, some of the Sirius XM radio guys, like the entire time, every night I was with at least one of them. Cam Robinson, we hung out twice. We all went out for drinks together. With D'Amico, like Stephen Ellis, I really got to know. Flow Hockey, those guys are so great, like Liz and Chris Peters. I think it was better for me for connections based reasons, but I wasn't really there for connections at all. I was just there because I was a fanboy. So like just getting to sit next to these people, I'm like, I've watched you for years. This is awesome. So we were just like all talking hockey. I was literally like asking questions that I've always wanted to know, like Bedard or Nazar, like random questions. And then, you saw that LA probably is known for having celebrities all the time, so nobody cared about NHL prospects. Like nobody cared about the media. If this was in like Toronto or Canada or like Montreal, I feel like there'd be fans lining up.
Oh yeah.
Matthew Schaefer, James Haggins, they were just sitting down at a restaurant and not one person came up to them. If I was ever in a restaurant and just saw Matthew Schaefer and James Haggins, and I didn't do this, I would be like, please, can I like talk to you or get an autograph or whatever it is. Now it's a little easier because I see all these guys as humans, but before I was in the fanboy mindset. I feel like it
Yeah.
flips pretty quickly, but
Yeah.
there was not one fan like that I saw that was going up to these prospects asking for pictures. The only person I saw was like this like one guy who was about like 40 asked Cam Robinson for a picture. And I'm like that's awesome.
Cam is
So
the celebrity at the
yeah,
event.
he was. Like everybody knew who Cam was, but nobody really knew who anybody else was. So I thought that was funny. But yeah, that draft was cool. Second day, a lot of people were upset because it was Lay's and popcorn, and it was out of the bags. So they were like, "They're trying to kill us here. They're trying to kill us." We could go to the concessions, but that was like we were all like working and stuff. So I feel like that was like the food the first day at the draft was incredible. Very good Mexican food, like awesome.
Oh, nice.
Second day, I was like, "There's a breakfast. I'm not gonna go to my restaurant to eat breakfast." There was like not very. It wasn't like a breakfast, but other than that, it was
Last
really
year.
good.
Last year in Vegas, the big issue there was on day two was the coffee machines were breaking down and everyone's lining up for coffee and it's like 9 in the morning and like you're just in the same line as like the NHL execs and everyone is equally grumpy because they're not caffeinated
Oh,
yet. It was like a really like it was an experience of solidarity of like, oh, we're all in very different places, right? Like some media, some team, some people that were just like security guards working there. But everyone had the exact same emotion. They were just like crankiness of like, we need the caffeine.
well, let me ask you because when you're interviewing players, because for LA they brought them to the third floor, so it took a little while. But when you were interviewing players last year at the media scrums, how many people were there? Because there was about like 15, 20 people, but they said there was only about 15% of media that was actually at that draft.
Yeah, like Vegas had a lot of media. I didn't spend much time at all in like the interview sections. Like at that point, I was like my draft year work had basically wrapped up with Dobber Prospect. So at the when we flew out to Las Vegas, I was like, I'm in like vacation mode. I'm just gonna enjoy, just gonna chat with people. I was hanging out with Brock Otten and Derek Neumeier for like most of the like day one and stuff, and like just like chatting with a bunch of people. Like Craig Button was there and had a lot of fun conversations to the point that I just didn't want to leave the media area. I was like, I'm happy here on the floor, and like in the sphere too is just it's like it was like hypnotizing almost with that massive screen on top of you. Where I was like, I don't want to go backstage for the interviews. I'm fine. I'm just gonna stick here instead. But like the year before that, they had like a media scrum before the draft for like the top 10 prospects in Nashville. So that was like Connor Bedard's draft and stuff. So there I was able to get a question in, but you had like 45 kind of media people. They're all trying to get a question in as well. So that was certainly an experience.
You know, it's interesting. I covered the 2025 draft, but I might have watched more tape and more clips on 2023. I was infatuated. I mean, I spent days on end watching 2025, like, but 2023, when Blackhawks got Bedard and we had the what 19th pick with Oliver Moore, and then we
19.
had like all those second rounders. Like I was consuming myself with all the clips, like watching you and Hattie and watching NHL Draft Pros, mainly the guys that I like am on the channels with now. I was just nerding out. I had my notebook and I was like, we need Gabe Perreault, we need Musty, we need more. Like I need these guys, and then we got more, which was cool. But um, yeah, it was that experience for me, I think was good to get my feet wet. I would have I would love to go to Las Vegas. I want to be in a Sphere draft. I feel like I will be at one point, hopefully crossing my fingers because I think they're going to do it a lot, but I want to experience the Sphere draft. That is my one thing that I want.
It's definitely a wild experience, especially with that Vegas heat, like just like the desert dry heat. Like as somebody who
Was it
grew up in
hot in there?
Montreal, yeah, like as someone who grew up in Montreal, I'm very used to like humidity as heat. Like the East Coast is just very humid. But the dry heat was both like hotter. Obviously, it was like 40 degrees Celsius, so like it was over like 110 Fahrenheit. Really, really hot every single day. But air conditioning everywhere, which is a savior, and did not spend much time outdoors apart from the pool sipping margaritas, so that helped to cool down a little bit. But definitely a surreal kind of like venue for a draft of like you're walking along the strip and you're like, oh, like we're going to the draft right now. Like we're like walking to the draft along the Vegas Strip. It's just so strange. It was also my first time being in Vegas, so it was like a whole experience on its own. So definitely wish that for you in terms of the Sphere draft. It was a blast, but I'd love to see them doing like a rotating draft cycle if it's like Montreal, Vegas, then one other team or something on a
Yeah.
loop because like I think that would do a lot in terms of like media and fan engagement too.
Kind of heard that might be the thing that they're gonna do. But you know, we never know. I'll say one more thing before we start and really get into this. There was this funny thing where I kept getting dirty Shirleys because Liz Charles from Flow Hockey got me into them, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. So I was with Ezra, who is the Muskegon Lumberjacks broadcaster, and I had about two Dirty Shirleys and like Shang, Stephen Ellis, like the Sirius XM guys were all there. And then Ezra sits down, he's like, can I get an old fashioned? And I'm like, dang it. They like these guys were chirping me for having grenadine and like this one drink and when I'm the prospect Dawn in quotes and it's like, what are you doing having that kind of drink? And he just sits down and has an old fashioned and then gets all of this credibility. So I need to change up my drink. I might be addicted to grenadine. I absolutely love sweet drinks. I don't know what it is, but
Cocktails are the
yeah,
best. I will die
they
on
are.
that
They're great.
hill. They're
I like pina
fantastic.
coladas.
I prefer drinks that I am soothed by rather than burnt by, personally. But
Yeah,
hey,
for
yeah,
sure. Okay, speaking of soothed, the Blackhawks drafted three incredible players that kind of soothed the fan base because every single time it was we're drafting under 6 foot forwards. We got the smallest person in our class was 6'1" Anton Frondel, who hits like a truck. Mainly
yeah.
one of the power forwards in this class, and especially in the top 10, even though he might not be like a traditional power forward because you need to be like 6'3", 6'4" traditionally. But what do you think of the Blackhawks class? What would your like grade be on who we got or who they got in the first couple of rounds?
So like at elite prospects, like Mitch, David, and I think Daniel put together an article grading every single draft class, and it came out like the day of day two, and the Blackhawks got a B grade in that. I think I see it a bit more favorably than they do. I would give it a B plus, maybe like B plus verging on A minus, but I'd probably still give it a B plus. I think that again with the third overall pick. It depends on who you ask, right? Like some people absolutely love it with Anton Frondel, and other people have more question marks. I do think that Chicago is an organization that's able to like complement the flaws and strengths of Frondel better than other teams would have been able to, and that he's going to fit in better in that organization with what they already have than with other teams because he won't be expected to be like a puck carrying line driver in Chicago. You have so many guys that can do that, right? Like Bedard and Nazar and even Oliver Moore. On all three lines, you're going to have a player that like excels in that facet of the game. But Frondel, like in terms of like the metrics that that Mitch Brown tracks every season, one of the worst transition forwards in this year's draft class. Like just incredibly uninvolved in terms of offensive transition. He's really good in the defensive zone and very good in the offensive zone with specific things. Like he can shut things down defensively and he can score goals like with his whopper of a shot. But connecting those two ends of the ice, I think, is definitely a work in progress with him that he'll need to develop before he can excel in the NHL. That said, I think for me, yeah, like a B plus feels about right for me because even though I have a couple qualms perhaps with that Frondel selection at third overall, I think that like again in this year's draft class. There were a couple players I think that were like quite clearly tiers above Anton Frondel that were left available on the board, like notably guys like James Higgins and Porter Martone. But if you're going for a guy who's probably going to be a physical centerman, he makes a bunch of sense. What I loved with the Blackhawks were the subsequent picks after that. My favorite player in the draft class, Václav Nestrasil, landed with his boyhood Hawks, which is just makes everybody happy. Mason West is a whole bunch of fun. So you got a lot of guys I think are quite interesting. And even beyond that cutoff, right? Like Nathan Bain is a very skilled goal scorer and overall offensive producer from the WHL. And Julius Sumpf is a pretty projectable bottom six guy who works hard defensively, has decent details, and I think has like a better than 30% chance of making it. And when you're picking in the fourth round, you take those odds, in my opinion. And then yeah, guys like Ashton Cumby as well, who's just really big and mean and hits hard. He logged like over 100 penalty minutes last year, but like the skating will need at least 5 years work before he's pro ready. And Ilya Konarski is honestly pretty fun pick in my opinion. Like he's a 20-year-old goaltender, but he's got size. He's like 6'4" or something and 6'3" and 194 pounds. And this year in the MHL, he was top four in save percentage, right in the mix with Pyotr Andrianov, who went in the first round to the Columbus Blue Jackets. So he's 2 years older, which definitely plays a role here. But I think in terms of swings on netminders, you could do a lot worse. I think in the later rounds. So as a whole, I thought it was a pretty good class, and that there was a pretty cohesive idea as well of what the Hawks brass went into the draft with of what they were looking for in terms of complementing their lineup. They were looking for a bit bit more meanness, a bit more power, a little bit more middle drive, and a little bit more physicality. And I think they got that on all fronts while still being able to add skill and scoring threat up front. So can't really complain too much here. I just think that maybe if you take a step back and look at the fact that a second and third overall pick ended up being Artem Levshunov and Anton Frondel, who in my opinions both have decent chances at ending up as a second pairing defenseman and a second line forward, respectively. That might be slightly bitter if you're a Hawks fan and you had your eyes on guys like Demidov, like Hagens, and all these other super high skill players. But at the same time, in terms of fit of what you already have in your lineup, you needed a player like Frondel who can be your net front guy. He can win the dirty battles in the corners, who can have that one-timer option as well on the opposite side from Connor Bedard. I think this is a perfectly serviceable draft class. But I can see why some Blackhawks fans may have been a little bit disappointed, especially after that first pick of the draft.
You had to bring up Demidov. I feel for any Blackhawks fan that's watching because that's just I was a Demidov guy. But I regress. I will say there are three things that I wanted to ask you about that. Obviously, will Anton Frondel's transition game become better with the American rink size going from the SHL because it is a larger rink size? And then we'll start there, and then I'll ask my other questions.
Yeah, I think it's going to get easier. But I think there's a lot of work to do in terms of getting. Like, I don't think Frondel is a comfortable projection to ever be like an above average transition forward in the NHL. I think he's always going to be a guy who relies on his line mates to do the bulk of the puck carrying in transition, and partly of that is also because of where he finds himself positionally. He drops low in the defensive zone to support his defenseman in the breakout and to just secure possession. That when the big breakout pass happens up to the defensive blue line and they start marching towards the offensive zone, he's like 40 feet behind them. So he's often like 3 or 4 seconds behind the play in the offensive zone. And I think that's also one thing that limited his offense a lot this year of where his team was able to get into positions where they could really create dangerous goal scoring opportunities, but he was still stuck in the neutral zone when that was developing. So I think like working on his explosiveness, the skating, I'd love to give him a skating coach just in terms of getting from A to B faster and to become more explosive in terms of like two-step acceleration and just getting moving out the gates. Because again, like this is an 18-year-old kid who's 6'1" and over 200 pounds. Like that's a big frame to lug around the ice. And I think that there's definitely room to grow in terms of lower body mobility and explosiveness to kind of boost that a little bit. But I think a lot of it's going to be dependent on where he finds himself in the lineup. Like if all goes well and he ends up being a first line guy with Bedard, then yeah, like you just give the puck to Connor Bedard and you let him do his thing with the puck, right? Like I wouldn't be concerned about Frondel getting caught too much in transition in that kind of a facet, but I think it maybe more likely ends up being a second line guy in Chicago, and maybe ends up being the guy that you attach to Frank Nazar's hip instead. I think those guys would complement each other beautifully, but then the question remains, who's the big person that insulates Connor Bedard, right? If I had to guess in terms of like long-term projections of what you have in the system right now, it would be that Bedard stays as your 1C, that Frondel ends up being your 2C, who takes a bit more of the matchup minutes, and you kind of see where guys like Nazar and Moore kind of fall around them. But I'd probably end up putting Nazar on the wing as well. Maybe Moore ends up being like a really speedy 3C, but Sacha Boisvert is definitely going to be competing for that slot too. So you have a lot of pieces coming into the fold, so you're going to see how things kind of fall. But yeah, I think that in terms of transition impact, this is a guy who reminds me a bit of players like Bo Horvat or like an Anders Lee in terms of they can make a good first pass. But that lack of explosiveness often means that they lean a bit more defensively than offensively, and Frontel's gonna compensate for that with his one-timer shot, right? Like he's gonna get scoring opportunities, but we'll see. I think like especially like the even strength scoring is gonna need to adapt a little bit to translate.
So you were talking about like him with Connor Bedard, and one of Connor Bedard's like main weaknesses is that his explosiveness, the skating, and it kind of seemed like both the Frondel and Bedard are have similar strengths and weaknesses, which is a little interesting. I think Frondel's better defensively, but Bedard's better play driving, play making, and
Oh yeah.
score. Like his shot is probably better. I mean,
Oh
Bedard's
yeah,
shot
easy,
was,
easy,
yeah,
easy.
yeah.
Like not a competition in my eyes. Like Frondel has a hammer of a shot, but Bedard's is one of the best I've scouted in the line. Like I don't think I've scouted a better shot in my experience scouting than Connor Bedard's. So yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it was being compared to Matthews, and we saw what Matthews did.
yeah, yeah. Like he just had a lot less weight behind it. So that, but apart from that, I think like it's a better he has a better shot than Cole Caulfield does, or at least at the same age. Like maybe now it's a bit closer, but yeah.
When we're talking about like Anton Frondel, we asked him at the combine what position he wants to be and wants to play. He said whatever Bedard's not. So it obviously seems like he would want to play with Connor Bedard. I mean, why wouldn't you? But do
Yeah.
you think that like let's go to the Mason West pick here. Skip over Václav for a second. But Mason West, the Blackhawks traded 2 second-round picks, 34 and 62, and then a 2027 fifth-round pick. What do you think about that trade? And what do you think of like the upside Mason West has towards his risks of playing football, not making it to the NHL, as well as, his skating?
The football risk I'm not really concerned about anymore. Like football, yeah. So he still has one more season, his senior year in high school football that he's gonna be playing. But he's already voiced his commitment. He's already committed to Michigan State for hockey. Like that decision has been made, in my opinion. Some people have been a bit concerned about like injury potentialities as a quarterback playing football, but I think like hockey is just as much a contact sport as football is. Like you have CTE issues in both, and as a quarterback, I think like yeah, like hits to the head, especially when you go up levels, become really big concerns. But I think for a 6'6" quarterback playing high school level football, I think hits shots to the head is a bit more difficult to come by of like players that can even reach that high to hit him. So. I'm not too concerned with the football. I think it's I'm looking forward to kind of seeing how he does in football this year because I think it's just fantastic that an NHL drafted player is going to be a quarterback in high school football this year. But I think it's a fascinating kind of swing to take, and just like Kyle Davidson said in his presser after the draft or after day one, is like he stepped up and he's going for a grand slam swing. Like there's no guarantee here, but you're absolutely swinging for the fences with Mason West and. I think the reason that I really liked this player and that I was more bullish on him than most in this draft year campaign is that he has a very unique blend of abilities and strengths and also weaknesses I think can take some really big steps now that he's going to primarily be focusing on hockey in his development and training and hopefully a lot more of that happening on ice as well. But he's a guy who has tremendous like anticipation and awareness. The scanning habits are high end. He's really a quarterback in how he thinks, and that also extends to the peripheral vision. He's able to spot things out of the corner of his eye and be able to make accurate look off passes that other players in this age group just cannot do with any regularity accurately. And for him, it came much easier this season. On top of that, he's a fantastic skater. The fluidity with which he moves, he's so athletic. And of course, right, he's 6'6", 200 pounds. He's a big guy, but he still doesn't really know how to use his physicality. But I think that's a good thing because it extends his ceiling significantly at this point. He's going to take 5 or 6 years to crystallize into an NHL piece, but I think when he gets there, that this is a player that's he's going to have a mean streak because he's always had the desire to get involved. He just doesn't know how to do it most efficiently just yet. So like lowering bending his knees, getting low in battles rather than just being upright. He's often out leveraged in the corners this year by like 5'8" defenders and stuff, where like he's looming over them but just cannot get to the puck. I think these types of things are going to take some real strides in the coming years, and Michigan State's a fantastic program to be going to. So I think there's a lot of things that kind of stack the odds in his favor, but he still remains a very, very like long runway, raw player who's no guarantee, but the type that could be a very like a unicorn of a second line scorer someday who brings you intensity, brings you range and that mobility and flashy handling skill. Like he has so much to be excited about, and I think he'd be a great complement as well to the other players in the system. Whether you're talking about guys like Nazar or more players who can push the pace and keep up with his skating, I think that could be really fun down the stretch.
Yeah, I really liked Mason West during the season, and I feel like the football is a little overblown. I just wanted your opinion, and I thought that was great. Very high hockey IQ. He says that he's like a Tage Thompson, taller guy that can do a lot. I want to talk about your favorite player in the draft, Václav Nestrasil, who was my favorite player in the draft. I mean, we've been talking about him at 25 for a very long time, or wherever the Blackhawks were drafting with the Toronto pick. What do you think Václav Nestrasil's ceiling is? And do you think that like his NHL projectability is a lot higher than people that are picked at 25?
I would say so. Like for me, Václav was a player I had in my 18-22 range. I think he finished around 19th overall on my final board or 18th overall. I was very bullish on him this campaign. And he's a player that I think is quite special in that combination of upside and runway as well as a higher floor. Like the way he plays, he's really a player that gains the coach's trust immediately. He was a coach's favorite all year long, playing all situations, power play, PK, last minute while trailing to score a goal, last minute protecting a lead. Doesn't matter, Václav's on the ice because he plays with real intensity and ferocity, good defensive details, some inconsistencies certainly, but for a player that was only instructed for the first time in his career to play physically by his coaches this campaign, I thought he was a very, very like powerful player as well. So he's only growing into that frame as well. So I think that the runway with him is really exciting. And even in the offensive zone, he's a very creative problem solver. He's a really solid playmaker. The hands are fluid. He's able to solve problems that he encounters through that handling skill. And I think the shot's pretty decent as well, especially when he gets in tight, close to the net front. He's able to get good elevation on pucks from shots in tight. So I think he has a variety of tools that will just complement the Blackhawks top six wonderfully. So I see him as a guy that could definitely make things work in a top six capacity. Whether that ends up being a complementary role on the top line where he could play like a I don't know, like Zach Hyman adjacent role in terms of being like the super intense F1 who can win you puck battles, but also thinks the game quickly and is skilled enough to elevate elite line mates. I think he and Bedard could work wonderfully together. I think he could also play very well off of a player like Anton Frondel. He has the playmaking ability to elevate the goal scoring with Frondel, and also him as a righty, Frondel's a lefty. That works quite nicely together, I think too. So. You have some nice potentialities, I think, with those players, but I think especially as well, like in terms of adding, as you were mentioning, like earlier in the show, the Blackhawks have only been like selecting undersized forwards in recent seasons, bringing in guys like Václav who have the skill and the intelligence to keep up with all those guys. But also bring elements of power and size and insight and middle-driven games and all these different habits. I think is going to also open up so much space and time for the smaller guys to do what they do best. So I love the selection for Chicago. I thought it was great value at 25th overall, and he was definitely a player that I know was crossing his fingers to be selected by Chicago. So you never want to shy away from players that want to be drafted by your team specifically either. So I think it's a great fit on all sides as well.
So obviously I might put up the reaction that Václav did, but it was just so amazing to see him that excited to be drafted by the Blackhawks. I want to stick on the Blackhawks for just a couple seconds before we go to the Habs. But one of the things about Václav is I feel that he does have that first line contributor type of upside. Now, like Brandon Saad-esque, not Brandon Saad as the player, but like Brandon Saad could have played anywhere down the lineup and he
Yeah,
would have had a really like been really good. But I dream of a line of Frondel, Bedard, and then Václav Nestrasil because I feel like they complement each other in a lot of ways. They might not be the fastest line, and they definitely all need to work on their explosiveness and their
they
skating,
do.
but
Yeah.
you have tall defensemen back there that are going to be able to use their reach to slow down speed. Like when I think of that, I think of Vlasic and Rinzel or
Yeah.
Artem Levshunov and Korchinski is smaller on the smaller side, but still like
Del Mastro
Korchinski,
maybe.
Master, yeah. Okay, so let's talk here for a sec. Korchinski, what do you think is going to happen with Korchinski? I just want your opinion on this.
He feels a little bit like the odd man out, doesn't he, at this point? I think like just with the profile of other defensemen in the system, like if you could pair if he were a right shot and you can pair him with Alex Vlasic, I think that there's a much clearer path for him in Chicago. But do you want him playing with either of Sam Rinzel or Levshunov in the next year or two? I think that would be really chaotic. Like you want to kind of have a stabilizer in there, and I wouldn't really want him on my third pairing either. And if he's not getting power play minutes, what's the point? But at the same time, you'd probably be selling low right now if you are trading him. So he's, I think, a tough one in terms of the situation right now, who maybe has been like left behind a little bit from the decisions that the organization's made in the last year and the players that they've gone out and acquired. Um, a fresh start could be useful. Like we've seen a couple like prospect hockey trades happening recently, right? Whether it be Logan Mailloux from the Montreal Canadiens going to the St. Louis Blues for Zachary Bolduc, going for a defenseman for a forward, or even like yesterday where we saw a forward for a forward. And yeah, like contract played a big role there with Isaac Howard and Tampa Bay not working out, but he got sent over to Edmonton in exchange for Sam O'Reilly, two very different players. O'Reilly's like a reliable two-way center who's going to be like a third line guy in the NHL, and Howard's going to be like a top six winger if he makes it, or an AHL top six if he doesn't. But I think that maybe exploring that could be interesting with Korchinski. I'm sure that there are teams that still covet his combination of mobility, offensive instincts, and that could use a guy to run a second power play unit in their lineup from like, maybe a bit more of an insulated role down the lineup. But yeah, he's a player that I think I've always been a bit more skeptical on. Like I had him ranked 27th overall or 29th overall in his draft year. So when the Blackhawks selected him at 7th, I was like, that's a bit rich for me. But yeah, I think that he may be one player that gets sacrificed from this lineup. But I think if he does stick around, it'll probably in the short term be in a third pairing insulated role with a. Do you have any like veteran solid right Ds that could like
Connor Murphy. Yeah,
Connor
Connor
Murphy,
Murphy.
yeah, I think that could theoretically work. Like ideally, you'd give him some kind of power play because he needs puck touches. Like if you don't get him puck touches, he's not going to be helping your team win games. But yeah, I think that especially with the rise of guys like Brinzel and Levshunov, you have other young players who also need those puck touches that might get priority in terms of development. So it's an interesting storyline to kind of keep track of. But where do you stand in terms of Korchinski at this point?
Korchinski's A game is very skilled offensively, but he is like very little B game. It's not like I would have rather had Jackson Smith. I love Jackson Smith. Blackhawks fans are going to see Jackson Smith, and then that's kind of what Korchinski could have been. I think Korchinski
Yeah.
has more raw upside offensively and has a little more skill there, just in his twitch and like, I mean, he's 2 inches smaller, 3 inches smaller, but you kind of just see more offensive ability. But what are you going to do? Play him over Rinzel on power play one or Artie in power play two? You got to prioritize giving Artie touches because that man shoots 10 shots a game if you let him. He is not afraid to shoot the puck. Kevin Korchinski is not afraid to shoot the puck either. But the thing is, he has like very little confidence right now because of coming up to the NHL too early. He should have played in the WHL.
Oh yeah.
Like, I would have loved it if him and Mirka were partners. I know they'd never overlapped, but just imagine him with Mirka. Allow him to just do whatever he wants in Seattle and then let him cook. You have Braden Kutu is there, and they were roommates. But I just feel like I really like Kevin Korchinski. I see that 2022 draft and see it as a very historic draft for any team. When you get Frank Nazar at 13 and Sam Rinzel at 25, and then pair that up with your seventh rounder, that could be, he's not, he's, is he going to be a 500 game player? I have no idea at this point. You probably want that for your seventh overall pick. So I don't know if he's going to live up to that billing. But the thing is, if he figures it out defensively and grows, gets some more muscle, he's a good skater. The minus numbers were terrible, but everybody was going to be bad. If this guy was like on the Florida Panthers, I would see no worries why he was not going to turn out really well. But the thing with the Blackhawks is they get dominated very quickly. You see Kevin Korchinski, and you're like, I'm going to go after him. There's really no
Yeah.
right-handed defenseman that's a superstar on our team. If you had that, like I would have liked the Blackhawks to try to go get Bowen Byram and just pair him up with Korchinski because you sell off of Connor Murphy. A contender's going to want him, but I think that Korchinski needs somebody that he can grow with, not a 31-year-old defenseman that's on his way out. Even though Connor Murphy's good, but he's injury prone. So what? He's going to develop really good chemistry with this guy, then you're going to trade him at the deadline, or he could get hurt. Like, I just don't really like that. I think Kevin probably spends some time in the A this year. He was AHL MVP. You saw what he did in 3-on-3 hockey. I think Kevin Korchinski is made in a lab for 3-on-3 hockey. Give him some space. But talking to Shane Malloy, who is a godfather of like hockey prospecting, I mean, he told me about the A game and B game and C game. C game is mainly height, but B game is basically when you are on time on ice, you're going to get the puck for about 5% of your entire shift. Patrick Kane might get it 7 or 8%. So it looks
Yeah.
like he has it more. But that's like 1 minute or 2 minutes a game. So when
Hmm.
you look at things like that. That's why Brady Martin went a lot higher than he did. That's why, Desnoyers did. James Haggins probably fell, and Cam Schmidt and LG Mooney probably fell for those reasons. Shout out LG Mooney because I think that was the steal of the class. But it's just really tough when your B game has very little potential in it at this point. I don't really see him as being able to stand up a guy at the blue line, go straight up for a hit. He's not really a shot blocker. He doesn't really have that instinctual instinct that we see Matthew Schaefer's brother had. So it's just really interesting. But I want to get to the Habs. Uh, we talked a lot about the Blackhawks, and I feel like gave the audience something good to think about. But for the Habs, what do you think is the grade? And this is with the Dobson trade, but even what do you think the Islanders did, like 16 and 17? Because they did best player available each time. So what do you think of that entire scenario for the Habs?
Yeah, I think it went well for both Montreal and the Islanders. I think it would have been a slam dunk for the Isles if they were able to trade up for Higgins, but clearly no team in the top seven was at all interested in playing ball. Like they all had their guys and they were going for them rather than trading down. So it just wasn't meant to be in the end. And Higgins landed in Boston to my dismay because like Habs Bruins rivalry is going to get interesting with Higgins in a couple of years' time, but. I think that that landing Victor Eklund at 16 is an absolute coup. Like that's a fantastic value. Sean Aitchison, I think, he's a really good prospect. I think there's a good chance he ends up being like a third line bruiser, a third pairing bruiser, maybe a second pairing bruiser, but I don't really see the upside beyond just that. So for me, he was more like an early 20s, mid 20s option than like 17th overall. I thought there were other guys left available, like your Lyndon Lakovics or that brand of player that could have also been very interesting, but even like Logan Hensler in terms of getting a right shot defenseman in or Blake Fiddler to replace Noah Dobson after that deal. So I thought that was interesting, especially because my initial impression when they selected Aitchison was like, oh, I guess they're gonna move Romanov now as an RFA because like Aitchison is just a clone of Alex Romanov. And then they turned around and gave him an 8-year extension at $6.25 million. So I'm now like interesting. You now have guys like Isaiah George and Romanov and now Aitchison that are all relatively similar mold in terms of focusing more on defense than offense. And where is the offense going to come from the blue line? Where's the puck moving necessarily? I think that's like one lingering question I have there with the Islanders, but that's kind of nitpicky. I think overall the Isles did great on draft day. They had a great draft class and they made the best out of a bad situation with Dobson. Like they didn't have the most negotiating leverage compared to if they would have moved him a year ago after that 70-point campaign, they would have gotten like 4 first-round picks or something for him rather than two middle of the pack first rounders and a solid potential third line guy in Emil Heineman. Who I think is a great fit in New York with the Islanders. Like he embodies the vibe, like the style and the vibe of the New York Islanders perfectly. So I think that's a great fit. But for the Montreal Canadiens, I'd give it an A. There are a couple picks in the draft where players I wasn't overly familiar with that I think are fine, and where I maybe would have taken other swings instead. Like they took Max and Vig out of the USHL in the seventh round. I mean, seventh round pick. I'm very nitpicky, clearly, but there are certain picks here where I thought there was a little bit more value on the board than what they got, but still. I thought that the Habs, even like independently of Dobson, which was already the big coup, right? Getting your number one right shot defenseman of the future, who's now locked up for 8 years. I think that's like really, really good business for the Montreal Canadiens. And I mean, I think in terms of 1-2 offensive defenseman combos league wide, can you find a better one than Noah Dobson and Lane Hudson? Like, I think that's a pretty dynamic duo in terms of producing offense from the blue line. But yeah, in terms of the draft picks. Trading up for Alexander Zhuravsky is ballsy. I like it. I think it's you're kind of putting all your eggs in one basket and you're taking a big swing on him. And clearly they see top six skill in this player, and the handling definitely supports that. I had him a little bit lower than this, and he would not have been the player I would have traded up for in this slot. I had my eye on like Blake Fiddler. I thought that he could have been interesting, but after drafting Noah Dobson or trading for Noah Dobson, maybe you didn't need the right D quite as much as you did previously. But LJ Mooney was fantastic value in the middle rounds in the fourth round at 113th overall, a player I've loved all year long in my viewings of the NTDP. And the way he moves on the ice is very Lane Hudson-esque, which I think is going to give a lot of Habs fans, or has already given a lot of Habs fans a lot of hype in terms of his like development camp footage of everyone being like, "Look at that guy! He moves like Lane," and everyone's getting excited about that, which is fun. But I also love the like trading up for Hayden Papanicus in the third round. Like I think that was really shrewd business because all the big guys were going off the board super fast. Basically, no one was falling among big guys that play well and are projectable and bring a variety of things. They were all off the board in the second round, except for Hayden Papanicus. He was like the one guy that I had top 50. He was 6'4", that was somehow just slipping. And then the Habs nabbed him, and I think he's a really interesting, like, potential third line center of the future in Montreal, who brings good details, two-way ability. He's a solid, fluid skater. He has a good amount of skill. He can create. And he's going to be in a great position to also take a leap in his development this season, likely as the first line center with the Kelowna Rockets, alongside potentially TJ Ginla. That's going to be a whole bunch of fun to see as well. So I think there were a bunch of swings here that Montreal took that were quite intelligent. I mean, Bryce Pickford is a swing on a D+1 guy, a re-entry who like scored over 30 goals from the blue line between the regular season and playoffs combined for Medicine Hat. Great goal scorer, like one of the better goal scorers among defensemen in this entire draft class. But still has to work a little bit on his skating, and he's a couple of years out certainly. But I think that's an interesting like shot to take, especially after moving out Logan Mailloux a couple days later. You have another offensive defenseman on down the right side in the system who's a couple of years younger, a bit more raw, not as big, but has I think a bit more balance between like his two-way game than Logan Mailloux does. Who like if anyone's seen the J Fresh graphic of Logan Mailloux's like 7 NHL games in October, it's like he was like about 5 times more chaotic in terms of creating a lot of offense, but conceding an insane amount of offense on the ice than any other defenseman league-wide in that sample. I think he was on the ice for like 4 expected goals per 60, but like 7 expected goals against per 60. So like he is pure chaos. Bryce Pickford brings some offense, but isn't that chaotic, which I like. So I think overall the Habs did well. Carlos Handel was good value as well as a two-way guy, good puck mover from the blue line, German defenseman playing the QM JHL. I like the draft class. I think that like, again there were other guys I think I would have personally swung on, but other than that, I think that the Habs did well. And overall, after the first like 4 picks the Habs made, and add in LJ Mooney with that, I had absolutely no complaints personally as a Habs fan.
Before we close it out, I want to ask you one more question. Who was your steal of the draft?
There are a couple options here. I mean, like the obvious one that comes to mind is Cameron Schmidt at 94th overall to the Dallas Stars. I think that was just like obscene value in terms of a guy who fell further than he should have, in my opinion. Um, but apart from that, because he to me is like the easy answer, so I want to maybe find someone more interesting. So let me go digging in like round 7 or something. I really liked the Philip Ekberg pick for the Carolina Hurricanes at 221st overall in the seventh round. I thought that he's a guy that's really intelligent, skilled, cerebral goal scorer, absolutely popped off at the U18s and just wasn't being given opportunities with the Ottawa 67s this year. So Dave Cameron just ruining another player's season here. Nothing new to see there, but I think he was really good value there for the Hurricanes. Sticking with Carolina, getting Kurban Limatov at like 67th overall or something in the third round was
Yeah, it was
great value
67th.
as
Yep.
well. Yeah, so I think that was fantastic in terms of a guy that it was an easy top 50 guy in my opinion. I thought he's excellent value, and I'm gonna end it off with Aiden Park, a player I like a bunch, and by far the best in terms of like draft reactions, walking up to the podium in a hoodie, not expecting to get picked. He looked like a fan going up to stage, but just like a hilarious reaction as well from Riker Lee, who was in Nashville during an interview, looking at the screen, seeing what was going on, and seeing his buddy walking up to the draft stage in his hoodie, his gray hoodie. But Aiden Park is he was a re-entry, so a 19-year-old player. Very cerebral, excellent two-way details. He's a hard worker, gets to the middle of the ice. His explosiveness and his skating definitely needs some work, as well as like his handling at speed. But if those two things can make it, I think he's a very projectable bottom 6 center. And after shipping out Sam O'Reilly, I think in terms of a guy who has about half the likelihood of becoming a similar player as Sam O'Reilly. I think that you could do a whole lot worse than Aiden Park, and he's also off to a really good development program in college hockey this year. So I think the Oilers are going to be pretty happy with that pick for the second last selection of the draft, and I was very happy to see him selected because he was like perhaps the least frustrating player I watched all year. Like whenever I watched him play, I was just like, good, this is good, another good decision. Oh wow, he's good. Like it was just consistently very good. Like never making a wrong decision, always being on the ball, working hard, making good reads, being supportive on both sides of the ice. I think he's a guy that is just gonna like gain coaches' trust at every point that he jumps levels to the point that like, he's gonna be playing NHL minutes someday. So I like that pick late in the draft.
Yeah, I really like that you said Aiden Park because what a story. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That was day two story, and then him and the LA Kings fan that was hyping up the crowd. Those two were great.
Yeah. I saw that like the Elite Prospects player page for Aiden Park absolutely popped off as well after that reaction. Like he had like one of the 4 or 5 most viewed player pages, and he was the second last pick of the draft.
Yeah.
And then I went on his player page and looked, and like the top 3 game reports are all by me. So like I feel like some of my reports got a couple more eyes on them because of that whole hoodie entrance he had on draft
Hey,
day.
that's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm going to give you the floor. Tell everybody what you're working on, what's coming up next, and are you going to the World Junior Summer Showcase?
I am not. I'm taking a little bit of a break, but I'm not taking a break from podcasting. So I'm still going to be doing the podcast over the summer. I'll be breaking down teams' prospect pools and grading their drafts and all that fun stuff in the coming months. And I have an article coming out as well. So for you Blackhawks fans that want to hear more about my thoughts on your draft class, gonna have an article coming out in the next day or two breaking down the entirety of the draft class over at Elite Prospects. So if you have a subscription, definitely go check that out. It's like a 2,600 word article, so I went in depth on all of the picks, all 8 selections. If you want to hear my thoughts on that definitely go check that out. Yeah, so locked on NHL prospects for my podcast content and Elite Prospects for all the scouting stuff. I definitely think that like I'll take a couple weeks off, but by the end of July I'll be digging into some 2026 draft tape as well because I have Gavin McKenna in my region now, so I got to start logging some game reports there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I'll definitely link the 2,600 word on the Blackhawks in the description. And definitely I'm going to post that on my X as well, just repost. So thank you so much for joining me. This was awesome. Love talking puck with you. Love talking draft recap. And I'm glad the Blackhawks got Václav because it made everybody happy. But thank you guys and peace.